Do you struggle with food cravings? Do you feel hungry straight after eating? In this video, we're going to look at how gluttony is not your fault, and science proves it. And I'll also share a way that you can get out of the clutches of gluttony that is science-backed as well. I'll share my personal struggle and how I overcame it. So stay with me as I break this down. Let's get into it. When I was obese, I could eat a whole large pizza by myself. I didn't feel like I was being gluttonous at all. After all, I ate until I was full, and after a while I'd be hungry again anyway. I thought as long as I'm not hungry, I'm not doing anything wrong. I thought it was normal. I thought it was okay. And at the time, I didn't even feel convicted of the sin of gluttony. I just thought that was what life was meant to be like. In my head, gluttony was just eating so much until you couldn't move. So for the sake of this video, I think we need to define what gluttony is. The biblical interpretation of the word gluttony is the excessive or sinful desire for food and drink. And here are some verses here that I'll share with you if you want to get deeper on the topic. So gluttony basically is an excessive emotional desire from food that either stems from or leads to different kinds of sin. It is that desire itself for food that is abnormal from normal desires that makes it sinful, because you find yourself filling that hole in your heart, that gap that you're feeling with food rather than the presence of God. So how could I as a believer be living in the sin of gluttony and not even know it? I think science has an answer for this, and it's something that I've learned personally as I've walked through my weight loss journey. I didn't know that there were things working behind the scenes that could lead to gluttony. And that is the endocrine system of the body, that if not treated well, actually starts to work against you. The little critters called hormones that work in the background, that if you abuse them, end up causing you to overeat and, as a result, gain some weight. The problem is how hormones work. Our bodies are regulated by things called hormones. And different hormones work in different ways to regulate our bodies. Think of hormones as messengers in the body, or they're like tiny text messages that travel through the bloodstream of your body to different organs in your body, delivering different instructions and allowing them to do things differently based on the message that they receive. So if you imagine your body like a big city, your hormones will be the traffic signals that allow different things to go to different destinations at different times in different ways. So when something happens in your body that needs attention, either you're hungry or you're feeling stressed, then these hormones are triggered and released by special glands in your body into the bloodstream. These hormones then travel to different tissues and organs in your body, telling them exactly what to do. For example, when you're hungry, your stomach sends a signal to the brain saying, "Hey, we're hungry here." So your brain releases a hormone called ghrelin into your bloodstream, which travels to your stomach, and your stomach starts growling and telling you, "Oh, you're hungry, eat something." So this is how hormones help you overeat. So how does this make me a glutton? A high carbohydrate diet, especially one that is typical of modern Western diet, or the diet that we're all taught at school, the typical food pyramid diet, can trigger hormonal responses that contribute to excessive hunger, overeating, and weight gain. And here is how. When you consume a meal high in carbohydrates, mostly in sugar or highly processed or highly refined carbohydrates, your blood sugar spikes up. In response, your pancreas secretes insulin that travels into the bloodstream that takes that glucose to be either used as energy at that point or to be stored. See, stored as fat. See, it's the carbohydrates that are stored in your body that makes you fat, not necessarily fat that makes you fat. But I'll get back to that later in this video. When you've had that high carbohydrate meal, insulin spikes in your body. When that happens, it brings your blood sugar levels down. And often, from that hard spike comes a deep crash. And this leads to feelings of hunger and craving for even more carbohydrates. And that cycle of spiking and dropping your blood sugar, having carbohydrates and insulin spike, is actually what causes more overeating and more feelings of hunger throughout the day. which then contributes to weight gain over time. So when I look back at my story, and I look at how I could have McDonald's double quarter pounder or something like that. I actually had a pounder once, but that's a story for another day. But I'd have this double quarter pounder and leave McDonald's and 20 minutes later be like ravenously hungry again. And I think that was it, the high carbohydrate meal in that fluffy soft bun and all the sauces and all that junk that's in there would spike my blood sugar. And I'd feel full for a time, but then it would drop and 20 minutes later I'd be ravenously hungry after consuming so many calories in just that one burger. And the two more hormones that I'd like to share with you. I've already mentioned ghrelin, but there's another one, leptin. And these two work in tandem. They work in regulating appetite and our energy balance. Leptin is actually produced by fat cells, and it lets us know and gives us that feeling of satiety or being full. Meanwhile, ghrelin is produced in the stomach and it stimulates appetite. A high carbohydrate diet messes up the balance between the leptin and the ghrelin, and it actually causes something called leptin resistance, which means that your body no longer can feel full even after eating. And as a result, that leads to overeating and weight gain and a lot of gluttony. But then again, the high carbohydrate meal also affects ghrelin in a negative way, because you might feel full for a certain time, but as your blood sugars fluctuate, it actually increases the amount of ghrelin in your system, which makes you feel more hungry, and then there's more overeating. Does that sound familiar at all for those of us who struggle with gluttony or used to struggle with overeating? That these cycles, it didn't feel like you were being bad, because your body was telling you, hey, I'm hungry, I need to eat. And you'd eat for a bit and you would be full. And did you know that carbohydrates can also affect neurotransmitters in our brains, hormones called serotonin? Carbohydrates can release sense of pleasure in the body and in the brain because it triggers serotonin. That's why you enjoy that cookie, that's why you enjoy that slice of cake or that bread or that croissant, because it gives you a sense of pleasure. There's something that triggers in your body, and that comes from high carbohydrate food. And that's where emotional eating comes from, because as you eat these high carbohydrate foods that are not good for you anyway, it triggers serotonin in your brain and you feel good and you feel better about yourself. So you keep doing it and you end up in a cycle of emotional eating, which is gluttony, which leads to excess fat gain. And when I think about it, I really wasn't an emotional eater. But if you think about life and how we celebrate life, life is full of food when we celebrate. And psychologically, we've gotten something in our heads wired that food means happiness, food means fun. And that's what also helps us get trapped in the gluttony trap. You see, consuming these foods also releases another neurotransmitter called dopamine. And dopamine is another neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. Some people say it's even as high and as strong as that, or has an effect of that as drugs. And if it has that effect, imagine what it does to your cravings. Imagine what it does to your desire for food, your desire for comfort and pleasure in what you eat, even if you're not physically hungry. So what am I saying here? I'm saying overall, a high carbohydrate diet can dysregulate your hormone signals, which confuse your appetite, your satiety, even your mood, leading to hunger, mood swings, and other things such as that, and weight gain over time. And that's why, even though gluttony might not be your fault, as long as you're feeding yourself the things that trigger these things inside of your body biochemically, it is your responsibility either way. I know the title of this video, people might be thinking that I'm trying to remove personal accountability or people being responsible for their actions, and I'm far from that. At the end of the day, gluttony is gluttony, and any sin that we have in our lives is able to separate us from relationship with God. So gluttony is actually a very serious thing, and that's why I'm doing this video, that you can have the tools to overcome it. And that's why I'm glad that this video does not end here, because I'm going to give you the tools, or at least the information that you need to bring your body back in alignment to a point where gluttony no longer has a hold of you. The first step is obviously acknowledging sin. As Christians, we believe that the first step to any sort of healing, any sort of breakthrough, any sort of change in our lives comes with admitting our faults, comes with admitting our sin before God. And I'd encourage you to do that. I had to do it personally when I realized that I was displeasing God with my body. And the Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So this is why I'm giving you the knowledge, so that you won't be like me, who was perishing in my sin of gluttony, not just spiritually being more separated and distant from God for it, but physically with my body being sick and ailed because of it. So with that dealt with, let me give you the handles that you need to overcome gluttony. How to bring your hormones back in line. When I was tired of being sick and tired, I did research. I wanted to find out what would be the best diet to lose weight, because this journey for me started not even 2 years ago. And I had to find a science-backed way to lose weight, because I knew at 38 I didn't have time on my side, and my body is also changing and aging as well, which was working against me. And that is why I chose the ketogenic diet out of all the options out there. The ketogenic diet is a high-fat, low or no carbohydrate diet that shifts you from using glucose as fuel to a state of ketosis where you use ketones as fuel. And those ketones are found where? In your own fat stores. And this metabolic shift can affect so many of the hormones in your body, leading to a switch. And that metabolic shift can influence the hormones in your body and switch them from fat storage mode to fat burning mode. And obviously the carnivore diet falls into this category, of which I'm mainly doing now. And unlike the bad hype that is out there, the ketogenic diet is not a fad. It's actually been around since the 1920s, being used by medical professionals. That's over 100 years ago. They used it to treat ailments such as epilepsy and other brain-related injuries and diseases. Unfortunately, it eventually lost momentum as modern drugs came up. But this is how ketogenic diets work. By severely restricting and lowering carbohydrates, ketogenic diets lower your blood sugar, which then leads to a reduced insulin secretion. Remember I said earlier that insulin helps you store energy, i.e. helps you get fatter. So if you're on a ketogenic diet, you're actually switching off that ability to store that energy. So then with lower insulin levels, your body turns to use fat as energy rather than carbohydrates. And that leads to fat loss. So like I was saying earlier, that carbohydrates make you fat, but fat doesn't make you fat, because carbohydrates are what is then turned into body fat with the spike of insulin. However, when you reverse it, your fat becomes a store of energy, and with lower insulin levels, you've got a greater store of energy in which your body actually prefers to run on fats than it does on carbohydrates. And yes, your brain needs a little bit of carbs, but your body produces just enough by a process called gluconeogenesis, where it produces enough glucose for your body to run by itself, no sugar added. And then there's another hormone I'd like to bring to your attention, glucagon. This is a hormone created in the pancreas again that counteracts the work of insulin. It promotes the breakdown of glycogen, which is the store of glucose in your liver, and releases that glucose into the bloodstream. On a ketogenic diet where your carb intake is low and your insulin levels are lower, glucagon levels rise. This hormonal response helps you clear the glycogen that is stored in your liver and then promotes the creation of ketone bodies or ketones in your bloodstream to be used as energy. Hashtag more fat burning. Thirdly, we have leptin, remember? That is a hormone that is produced by fat cells that regulate appetite and energy balance. Some studies suggest that a ketogenic diet increases leptin sensitivity, meaning that our body is even more responsive to the satiety signals that leptin sends. In other words, you feel less hungry and eliminates the cravings that you feel for such things such as high carbohydrate food. This makes it so much easier to adhere to the ketogenic lifestyle, to make sure that you're not giving into the cravings, and obviously results in weight loss due to even calorie deficits. And do you remember our friend ghrelin, the hormone that stimulates hunger and food intake? While initially when you're starting on a ketogenic or carnivore diet, your ghrelin signals might go up, but over long term or medium to long term, the ghrelin levels get suppressed heavily. This is when your desire for food declines and goes back to normal, the way God made it. Factory settings, no cravings, no gluttony. And to top that off, the ketogenic diets trigger catecholamines, also known as adrenaline or noradrenaline. And these are hormones that are released due to stress or physical activity. High levels of these hormones actually triggers lipolysis, which is the breakdown of fatty acids into energy. And this helps the body burn more fat, especially during periods of fasting and exercise, leading to fat loss. And that is why I was able to lose so much weight, about 100 pounds to date, in less than 18 months, because I found these triggers, I found this knowledge, this wisdom that God had given us through science and through biology to be able to hack the body and lose weight rapidly. So not only does the ketogenic diet stop the effects of gluttony, in fact, it reverses it as well. Today I stand as a living testament to what God has done in and through my life through the carnivore diet. And I'm not saying this is for every Christian to do. Please don't get me wrong there. But I'm saying that there are some Christians who can benefit tremendously from trying a ketogenic lifestyle. So if you struggled with gluttony, if you have metabolic disorders, or you are or were a beast like me, then I strongly recommend that you try the carnivore diet today. Overall, all the hormonal changes that come from a ketogenic lifestyle create a favorable environment for fat loss by promoting fat metabolism and reducing appetite. It almost feels like a cheat code. Now that my hormones are back in order, I find it so hard to overeat now. Gluttony has disappeared and gone, and I no longer struggle with it. My body knows how much it needs to eat, and that can vary from day to day. The days when I don't need to eat, the days when I eat once a day, days when I eat 3 times a day. But really, I never find myself eating nearly as much as I used to eat, just even calorically speaking or physically quantity speaking than before. So people have mistakenly thought that gluttony is caused by how much you eat. But now, with this science information, it shows that it's caused more by what you eat. If you eat the wrong things, if you eat garbage, highly processed food, then you're going to suffer the consequences of gluttony. So while gluttony in this day and age might not be your fault, it is your responsibility. So what are you going to do about it? One thing I recommend is to join us in the Bible and Beef community, where we glorify God with our bodies through the carnivore lifestyle. If you want more information about how I did this, you can click or tap the screen there and watch the video where I share how I lost 44 kilos eating cheeseburgers. See you there.